information that enhances economic, political, and social welfare in the continent. We provide a platform to share news, ideas, and useful information from different perspectives that reflect our African traditions such as music, art, and fashion, among others. With the dawn of the new year, Today is here to deliver this information and more for you, our valued audience and stakeholders. We have spared no resources in refining our platform to make it better and look forward to serving your needs and you being part of a rejuvenated Africa that has so much to offer the world. Thank you for stopping by and Happy New Year, everyone.
Hello, welcome to Afrique Today. My name is Alain Pierre and I'm glad to be here on Afrique Today. And like yesterday, we keep going and with this conversation, and I have with me now live from Maryland, Dr. Shingi. She will be the host today. Now, before I take her live, I would like to remember that a lot of people ask me how to watch Afrique Today. Is very simple. You can just watch Afrique Today directly. Go to www.afriquetoday.com. You can also watch that on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, using Afrique Today app. Afrique Today already available on Smart TV. Hey, Dr. Shingi, if you listen to me, how are you today?
I'm good, Alain, and it's Shingi, not Doctor.
Oh, okay, okay, great, Shingi. I'm glad to be here today with you, and what we will talk today about.
All right. Good evening, and welcome to the second edition in a series of virtual discussions brought to you by the Immigrant Community Services in partnership with Montgomery County Business Portal, Wafamba Portal Consulting, and of course you, Alain, with Afriquetoday. And this is a platform where we bring you critical resources and information as the world deals with the COVID-19 pandemic. And as you said earlier, my name is Shingi Mangwiro, and I'm honored to be your host and moderator today. And I also want to warmly welcome a very good colleague who many of you in Montgomery County may know. Our guest is Daniel Karoma. He's the Business Liaison Officer of Montgomery County.
Thank you so much for having me.
So today we're going to be discussing the Montgomery County Public Health Emergency Grant, and a lot of states, the federal government have been giving relief to people affected, especially business owners affected by COVID-19. So Daniel, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. And for people who are new, let me tell you a bit about Immigrant Community Services and what we do. Immigrant Community Services is an organization serving the African communities in the Washington, D.C. metro. And it's based out of Montgomery County. ICS was established in 2012 in response to the exponential growth of African immigrants in the county and the need for multicultural support to the African community. And ICS works to support refugee and immigrant communities through culturally specific programs such as these that help them thrive and become more successful contributors to society. And ICS offers a broad range of social, family, employment, education, and cultural programs to the African and other immigrant communities in Montgomery County and surrounding areas. I know that's a mouthful of the services that we do. And you can always get more information on the website, imiserve.org. And our discussion today, as I said earlier, it's a second in a series and falls under the Economic Development Program. And as I said, we have Daniel Karoma, who's the Business Liaison Officer for Montgomery County in the state of Maryland. His work in the Office of the County Executive, he does a lot of things. He wears many hats, but what we're going to be specifically talking about today is his work in the County Executive Office that focuses on assisting companies doing business in or with Montgomery County government. So he manages the award-winning Montgomery County Business Portal, a gateway to information on how Montgomery County interacts with the business community. I hope I got it right, Daniel.
Absolutely, you got it exactly right. And thank you so much again for hosting this event.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. And Daniel, in the last few weeks, there's been a lot of information on financial assistance for small businesses, but many of the small businesses are not sure what this assistance is or if they even qualify. Could you please explain to our viewers what Montgomery County Public Health Emergency Grant, PHEG program entails?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, let me thank you and thank Afriquetoday. Let me thank Immigrant Community Services for helping us reach to our constituents who are here in Montgomery County, our businesses, our nonprofits. We know these are very unusual times, given all the things that are happening. And we know that it's been very challenging for many of our small minority businesses and ethnic nonprofits. So it was to this light that the county government stood up $20 million to help businesses and nonprofits that are in the county. We know that's a lot of money, but it's also not enough when we look at the scale at which businesses and nonprofits are impacted right now when it comes to the COVID-19. So just a little bit about the program, and the website was put up a few minutes ago. And I believe you guys will also share the website so that you can go there. It's a public website, and we've made it available and translate the infographics that we've developed into the top 6 languages that are spoken here in Montgomery County. So when you go, you'll be able to find information in French, in Amharic, in Chinese, in Spanish, in Vietnamese, and in Korean. The program, again, as I say, the amount that was set aside for businesses and nonprofits is 20 million out of the large package that was passed by the county council. And part of that 20 million, what we did, we looked at some of the programs at the state and federal level and see those who may have been excluded from those programs, and we incorporated into our Montgomery County program. So as a result of that, if you are a sole proprietor or an independent contractor, you are eligible to apply for our program. If you are a nonprofit, you are eligible to apply for our program. And then, of course, all the other registered entities like corporation, limited liability company, limited liability, or limited liability partnership, and all those are all eligible to apply. In the legislation that was passed, the county government mandated that businesses and nonprofits can apply for up to $75,000. And in addition to that, there's an additional $2,500 that nonprofit and for-profit businesses can apply for in order for them to do telework. It could be by telework hardware or telework software. So that being said, again, $20 million is the total, and the eligibility amount is up to $75,000. Then in addition to that, an additional $2,500. So the program went live yesterday. The application itself went live yesterday. We've been doing lots of outreach. And again, this is part of the outreach process as well, because the way we have developed the executive regs is not a first come, first serve. So which means that just because somebody applies first does not mean that they get to get the funding first. It's based on the eligibility. So let me go through some of the criteria. Your principal place of business has to be here in Montgomery County, or if you have 50% or more of your employees working in Montgomery County, then you are eligible to apply. And again, the program was set up for businesses and nonprofits that have 100 or fewer employees. So therefore, those who have more than 100 employees are not eligible to apply. But for businesses and nonprofits that have 100 and fewer employees, they are eligible to apply. Well, again, you have to demonstrate that you have a significant decline in revenues. And what we need for you to show is we need financials, because that's the only way we can get a historical fact about the business finances. And then we looked at the current to determine the decline in revenues. So we're asking for 2 years of taxes. If you have not filed your 2019, that's okay. Just provide your 2018 and your 2017 taxes. If you are a nonprofit, then you need to provide your 990s, so 2017 and 2018 990. If you are a sole proprietor or an independent contractor, you just need to provide your Schedule C, not the entire personal tax return that you file, but just the Schedule C. That's what you need to submit. In addition to one of those that I've just went through, then you need to provide, if you file, interim financials, you need to provide that. Or you can just give us a monthly P&L statement, a profit and loss statement. And there are many accounting softwares that could actually generate that. And when you provide that to us, then what we're looking at the year-over-year revenues. And then from there, we will take the top line of that and then average it. And then that will give us our monthly, in terms of your monthly revenues. And then we'll compare it with the P&L statement or the interim financials for January and February. Mm-hmm. And then in March, we'll see the dip in terms of the loss that you've incurred because of COVID-19. And then we will determine, okay, based on that decline in revenues, you're eligible for this amount. And that's the amount that we'll basically try to grant to the business or the nonprofit. To make this fast, because our goal is to make is to get the money to businesses and nonprofits really fast. We've determined that those who are eligible, the first $10,000, we're going to grant them immediately.
Okay.
So that those funds could be in their business account, or if they are a sole proprietor, in that account that they have. If it could be a personal account, if they're nonprofits, their nonprofit account, because we need to make sure we get the money out as soon as possible. So let me stop there for now. I think maybe if there are additional questions, I can take that, and from there, if we go to the website, I can show in terms of where people need to go to apply, but also some of the we have a sample of the application online as well for people to look at all the questions that are on the form, and they can fill out the form before they go live to the page and submit their applications.
Okay. All right. So I had a bit of technical difficulty there, but since I'm back online. So my question, Daniel, you mentioned we want to talk about eligibility and making sure that the right people apply and that people are fully equipped with the right information that they need. You mentioned that you need to submit your financials for at least 2 years. How about somebody who started their business, say, in June of 2019? Is that person eligible?
That's a great question. And the answer to that question is yes, you are eligible. So even though you don't have 2 years of financials, then what we'll look for is if you have, let's say, your quarterly filings, you can submit that, and then also your profit and loss statement for each month. And then also, if you have fewer than 5 employees, you can actually submit your bank statements, because that would also give us a record of your monthly revenues as well.
Okay. And say, for example, you are a sole proprietor, you do nails or you do hair, and you're not really registered because you file your taxes on your 1040 tax return. Would you also be eligible to apply for this grant?
The answer to the question is yes, because what happens is that sole proprietors are not required to register with the state, except if you have a DBA. Then you can go and do, for example, Daniel Karoma doing business as ABC, right? So you can. So then then you need to register. But just as a sole proprietor, you're not required to register with the state. So therefore, yes, you can apply. But then what we would look for again, sole proprietors and independent contractors, what they do is that they file a Schedule C in their personal taxes. So part of the personal tax filings that they do, because they have to separate the business income from the personal income, that's where that is recorded, and that's the Schedule C we're looking for in their personal tax filings. They don't have to give us the entire personal taxes, but they just need to take out the Schedule C, and that's what we look at. If they give us 2 years of that, then we're able to establish a baseline in terms of their gross revenue when it comes to their business revenues, and then we can then compare that with the P&L or the bank statement they provide to give us the last 2 months of revenues, so we can then measure that to determine the loss in revenues for the month of March.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. And tell us more about the Montgomery County Business Portal and other resources. Maybe some people may be spread out in the county. What other resources or what other organizations can they get this information, or even the application for the application to qualify for the grant?
Sure. So if we go to the website, again, all what I just discussed is in the middle of the web page, and so we've numbered them. Number 1 is eligibility. Number 2 is what people need to prepare to the document they need to collect in order for them to apply, and then number 3 is the application itself. So when somebody clicks on the application, basically it asks for basic business information. And that's if you scroll down a little bit, scroll down all the way down to number 3. Again, once you provide that, then we're also going to ask you in terms of the intended use of the funds, in terms of if you're eligible and we're giving you the money, what is it that you're going to use the money for? Are you going to use it for to pay your rent in terms of the business rent? Are you going to pay your utilities, the business utilities? Are you going to pay If you have a payroll, you're going to do payroll. So we'll ask for that, and you'll give us percentages in terms of how you would use the fund.
Okay.
The good thing is, as I say, on the right-hand side of the application, and that's if you go all the way back up, you will see where it says sample. You'll see where it says English form sample, and where it says application from translation. You are able to actually click on that. That's the PDF version of the entire application. And as I say, what people have done is some people have been able to print that out and fill it out and then come back online and fill out the online version, because you're not able to submit the PDF, but at least you know all the questions that are on the online version, so that it'll be easy for you to then come and fill them out.
All right. And for people watching from home or wherever you are, you can always visit, you can always post your questions on Facebook, on the Immigrant Community Services Twitter, and the handle is @IMISERV. So we look forward to having your questions. It's @IMMISERV. So post your questions so that Daniel can be able to address those. And Daniel, has the application opened? How long is it open for? Can you answer to that?
Yes, that's a good question. So yes, the application opened yesterday, and we don't have a deadline on the application. The reason for that is that we want to make sure as many people as possible, as many businesses as possible, as many nonprofits as possible are able to apply, because as I said earlier, it's not a first come, first serve. So which means that you may apply in the beginning and you are eligible. You may apply in the middle and you're eligible. You may apply at the end, you're eligible. So that's why we don't have an end date on the application. So we're encouraging everybody, but just be mindful. As I said, the total amount of funds that have been made available is $20 million. It is a lot of money, but it's really not a lot of money when we look at the scale at which some businesses have been impacted. So therefore, again, if you know anyone who is an independent contractor, anyone who is a small business owner, anyone who owns a nonprofit here in Montgomery County, please encourage them to go to the website and for them to prepare and then apply.
All right. And another question on eligibility and who qualifies. So my question was, will faith-based organizations, say for example, you're a church owner, will you be able to qualify for this grant? Because we want to identify all the businesses and not leave anyone out. So they're faith-based organizations. Are those eligible to apply? And know some people have just volunteers and they don't have employees working for them. Are they eligible for this?
And that's a great question, because, and I'm also happy you asked that question, because I know faith-based organizations were not able to apply for certain programs, other programs. But to answer your question, yes, faith-based organizations that are 501c3 are eligible to apply, and they need to provide exactly the same financials that we just discussed, because that's how we're going to determine the significant loss in revenues that they have faced.
Okay. Sounds good. And is the money restricted in terms of the purpose that it can be used for, or you can use it for any purpose that you see fit as a business owner?
That's an amazing question. So no, we don't have any restrictions on the funds. However, that's why we again are allowing businesses and nonprofits to tell us the intended use of the funds. Because what we're looking for is that, for example, if you've applied for maybe a federal program, a state program, let's say you apply for the federal program, and that the federal funds you're going to use towards payroll, then our funds can then go towards rent.
Okay.
Let's say you applied for the state funds and you get the state funds and you want to use the state funds towards rent, and our funds can then go towards utilities. So we don't have any restrictions in terms of how you use it, but the only thing is that you cannot use our funds for the same purpose for which maybe the state or the federal governments, if they give you any funds.
Okay, so which brings you to another question. So you can apply, so this is totally separate if you're getting other types of funding, because I know a lot of local government, the county, the cities are providing relief to their residents. So can you apply for a multitude of these types of grants, or are you, once you apply for one, you don't qualify for anything else?
So the answer to your question is yes. In fact, we're encouraging all our businesses and nonprofits to apply for multiple programs. At the end of the day, as I say, our program is 20 million. It is a lot of money, but it wouldn't, as I say, given the scale at which the disruption is right now in terms of business activities, if you can get money from anywhere that would help you stay in business or help you run your nonprofit, please go ahead and apply. It does not disqualify you from applying to our program.
Okay, and we have a question from somebody, one of our viewers. So the question is, what happens if you run out of funds before your application is approved? So I'll add to that question. How long is the approval process? What if you run out of funds before it's been approved?
So that's a good question. And so right now, again, as I say, we have a high demand, and we're working through each application in terms of review and the approval. Now, we know the funds are going to be exhaustive. However, I mean, we know that there are conversations in the county council in terms of adding more money to the fund. However, as I say, we cannot, determine when they do that, and that's why we're not closing the application, because remember, this thing started yesterday. So right now we're not out of funds yet. Let me just say that. So that's why I'm here tonight, and I'm doing many other conversations and webinars to encourage anyone who is watching us to please go, again, make sure you're prepared, because I don't want to say go and apply, because it's not, if you apply fast, you get the money, you're eligible. No, you have to prepare and then get all the financials that needs to be to support in terms of your application, and then apply. As I said, those who applied in the beginning, some of them may be eligible and some may not be eligible. Some of them who apply in the middle, like this is the second day of the program. There might be some people who apply maybe at the end of the month. They may still be eligible if we have funds. The question is not when you apply, is are you eligible for the program? So I will encourage everyone that have incur a significant decline in revenues. If you live in Montgomery County, you are an independent contractor, you are a sole proprietor, you are a nonprofit, you are a business, please apply.
All right. And people always think, there's no such thing as free money. Can you address that? Does somebody have to pay taxes on this money later? Do they have to repay it back to the county?
So that's a good question. Now, these are public funds, so these are taxpayer funds. So which means that there's transparency in these funds. What I mean by that is that if once you are granted the funds, the name of the entity, so it could be the nonprofit or for-profit business, will be published, because it's public information, but also the amount that they receive from the county government will also be published. And this is not anything new. This is something that we've done for any entity that have received funds from the county government, because it's public funds. So the public need to know those who get money from the government. And then secondly, you're also agreeing that the county will audit your financials to show that what you applied for, the purposes for your application, was indeed fulfilled. For example, if you said that you are going to use this money for operational expenses, we want to make sure that it was used for that. So that's what that audit will basically be. It wouldn't be anything other than that. It's just to show that indeed the application that you submitted, and which is based on why you were approved, then at the end you're able to say, okay, yes, this is how I use the funds, and so we will be able to give account to the public for the use of those funds. So indeed, There's no free money. However, this is taxpayers' money. And many who are doing business here in the county, the independent contractors, sole proprietors, they all pay taxes. Businesses all pay taxes. So this is your money that is coming back to you, but there's an accountability piece because it's public. This is public dollars, which demands us to make the information public as well.
All right. And again, if you're watching, you can always go to our Twitter. It's at Emiserve. You can go on our Facebook page at Emiserve, or you can visit the website, emiserve.org. So send in your questions. If you have any other questions regarding the Montgomery County Public Health Emergency Grant. And there's so many other resources. I'm actually looking at the Montgomery County website right now. You can always look at the Q&A, because there are always questions. Someone, as soon as we hang up, someone will have a call, a question that they forgot to ask about. Another question that's here is, say you're an Uber driver or a taxi driver. So I just want to make sure we address all types of employment to make sure as many people apply for this as possible. People like Uber drivers, taxi drivers who, just do this on the side, can they also apply?
Yes, if you're an independent contractor, if you're a sole proprietor, yes. So Uber drivers that are independent contractors, sole proprietors, yes, they are eligible to apply.
All right. And someone asked, my program is not registered as a business, but I pay my taxes every year. I think we talked about that. Maybe you can answer that again. Will I be able to apply for this grant?
So again, depending on the entity type, again, the only entities that are not required to register in the state of Maryland, if you are a faith-based organization, you're not required to register as an entity, or if you're a sole proprietor. So hopefully you're one of those two, because if not, then you should have made sure that you register and also and be paying taxes. So except if you are, again, a sole proprietor or faith-based organization, and if you fall within those two, yes, you're eligible to apply. But let's say if you're running your business as as any other entity besides those two, you would not be eligible, because if you're not registered, that means the state does not recognize your entity here in the state. And if the state does not recognize your entity, we cannot we cannot grant you any public funds.
Okay. And specifically, this is Montgomery County residents. So if I live in Frederick, I wouldn't be able to qualify, even though my business is in Montgomery County. How about if my business is in Montgomery County, but I live in Frederick? Does that make, and I'm a sole proprietor?
Yes. So if your principal place of business is Montgomery County, you are eligible no matter where you live. If 50% of your employees work in Montgomery County, you are eligible no matter where you live.
All right. Yeah, so keep those questions coming in. We still have time on the clock. And let me see, I think there's a question coming in. Is there a hotline? That's a good question. Is there a hotline to check for your application status?
All right, so if you pull up the website again, and I want to show you something on the right-hand side. If you pull up the website, is the website up?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you go all the way up, there you go. That's fine. We have an area where it says organizations offering assistance. If you click on that, it shows you we have all these organizations that are ready to help our nonprofits, individuals, and our businesses to fill out the application. So if you have any questions or you want clarity on something, please reach out to any of those listed organizations that would help you. The good thing about those organizations is that they also have language capacity. So in other words, if you need help in French, you can get someone to speak French and help you with your application. If you need help with with Amharic, there will be somebody there who speaks Amharic who will be able to help you.
All right, that's a good question. And I also saw, since we're all not supposed to be moving around and most businesses are closed, email. I saw a lot of those organizations have their email address listed. So in addition to the hotline, because you may be sitting there for hours waiting for someone to pick up your phone, your call, you can also send them an email to get some of your questions answered.
That is so that in fact that was what we were thinking about when we decided to recruit a diverse range of organizations, but also a diverse method by which you can contact them, because we know that many of the hotlines right now they're not hot anymore, because they're like music stations now, right? You have to sit down and listen to all the music. But what we've done is put together a robust, experts in those organizations that are able to help people. So if you try one, it doesn't work. Most likely, by the time you get down to the last one, you will hear back from someone.
All right. So you guys are doing a very good job trying to make sure that you reach as many people and as many businesses as possible. And after this call, is this so can they watch this web? I guess that's on Afriquetv. You can always visit Afriquetv, and I'm sure they have their archives on there to watch another show, to share it with a friend. Don't just keep this information to yourself. Share it with as many people as you know, because a lot of people are not getting paid. Especially, it's hard being an entrepreneur because your livelihood depends on things moving and people being out and about. So our hearts go out to you. And we have these resources that Daniel has been talking about. So again, go onto our Twitter page at IMISERV, send in your questions on our Facebook page. Let's see if there are any more questions coming in. Okay. All right. So I'll ask another question. And you may have addressed it when you spoke about the whole program. Is there a minimum amount that you can apply for, and is there a maximum amount that you can apply for?
So that's a good question. But basically, the way the program is designed, we will determine eligibility, and then we will then assess in terms of how much you are eligible for. The way the legislation was written is that no matter how much you're eligible for, the maximum that any one entity can receive is $75,000, and then an additional $2,500. So, which means that once we've done the analysis in the back end, in terms of how much first of all, if you're eligible, and then how much you're eligible for, then we will be the one to reach out to you and tell you exactly how much you've been awarded.
Okay. And once I'm eligible, I've applied and everything, is the money sent to me via check, direct deposit? What are the payment options to receive those funds?
That is a great question. So once we've determined eligibility and the amount, then someone in our fulfillment team will call the sole proprietor, independent contractor, the nonprofit, or the business. And then if they are already not registered in our CVRS system, that's the county's Central Vendor Registration System, then they will guide them to ensure that they are registered. And in that registration process, they will submit their ACH information that would enable the county to deposit the money into their business account or their nonprofit account.
Mm-hmm. All right, and this is another question coming in. I know some people are joining in late, but we will repeat the question. So this person is asking, they are sole proprietor. They started their business in 2019, and it's just them, because it's a sole proprietor. Does this, do they qualify for the grant for their own?
Yes, they are. If they're based in Montgomery County, which is their principal place of business, and also if they have incurred a significant loss in revenues.
Okay. And significant loss in revenue. We want to really break it down, Daniel. Can you really explain what significant loss in revenue means?
Absolutely. So we've determined significant loss in revenue to be 50% or greater loss in revenues. Mm-hmm. So what does that mean? It means that we take the 2-year history, financial history, and that's what we're asking for, 2 years financials. So we look at,
but remember,
go ahead.
Daniel just started in 2019. So they don't have 2 years worth of history. and we want to define significant loss
Sure.
for them.
So then we'll take the 2019 taxes, and then we will look at the January financials. It could or P&L, profit and loss statement. Then we will look at the February P&L statement, and then we'll look at the March P&L statement. So what that would give us, we can average those out, and now we have a baseline in terms of your monthly gross revenues. And then in March, we will see basically that decline because many business interruptions took place in March. So we would see the whole of fiscal year 2019. Well, the year 2019, we'll see all your monthly transactions in terms of gross revenues. And then we'll also see January 2020, February 2020, and then March 2020. That has given us a total, of 15 months of financial history. And then when we look at March, we'll see that dip. If that dip, for example, let me add some numbers. This is just for an example. Let's say when we do the average, it averages out that you've been making, let's say, $10,000 a month on an average. But then we come to March and we saw that you only made $5,000 in March. That's a 50% decline in revenues.
Okay.
And so that automatically will count towards your eligibility. That would make you eligible because you've met the one criteria, which is a significant decline in revenues.
All right. And this person is asking again, some of them are repetition, but that's okay because people are joining in. That's good. This person is saying they have not filed their 2019. Can you use their 2018 and their 2019 bank statements and also their 2020 bank statements, I guess, for the month of January, February, and part of March? Will I need more info than these? My business is older than 2 years. So if their business is older than 2 years, that is amazing because they can provide me with the not only 2018 taxes, but the 2017 taxes. And then in addition to those 2 years, they can also provide the January, February, and March interim financials. Okay. All right. Those are good questions, people. And if you're joining us, welcome to the program. We have Daniel Koroma here. He's the business liaison officer of Montgomery County. We have a lot of information that's available on the website. And Daniel, if you can repeat the Montgomery County website and the Montgomery County Business Portal website, because we have new people who are coming in and we want to make sure that they also have as much information as possible.
Absolutely. I think you guys should share the website on the chat function so that people will be able to click on it and go there live.
Yeah.
But the Biz portal is montgomerycountymd.gov/biz. And if you bring up the website again, you should be able to see the entire URL for this for the grant program we're discussing right now.
There's another question. It says, what about NGOs working in Montgomery County but working internationally? Do they qualify?
That's a good question. No, your principal place of business has to be in Montgomery County. Now, if you do international work, so we basically have to look at your revenue, and so we have to look at your revenues. So if you're based here in Montgomery County, you are eligible, no matter where your work is, because we look at revenues. Yes.
Okay. So so it's all about. So your business, even though your business is registered in Montgomery County, but because your operations are overseas, you would not qualify. Is that correct?
That we look at your revenues. So this is purely revenues. That's right. So if once your principal place of business is Montgomery County, it doesn't matter where you're doing your operations. It could be in Montgomery County or outside of Montgomery County, because the determinant for the eligibility is the decline in revenues, right? Okay. So if your business, because we have international businesses also that are here, not only NGOs, right? So if you're based in Montgomery County, And no matter where you do business, once you've seen a significant decline in revenues, you are eligible to apply.
Okay. And another question, I guess everyone in every type of business is just trying to get clarification. Will family childcare providers be eligible for these small businesses financial support?
Absolutely. And the answer is yes, absolutely yes. In fact, we've received so many inquiry from childcare providers, home-based providers, home-based childcare providers. So yes, most of them are sole proprietors. So don't get worried about the legal entity registration piece. Just file and provide your Schedule C on your personal taxes. We don't need the entire personal taxes. We only need the Schedule C from your personal taxes, because that's how we'll determine, the historic monthly revenues, but also we can also look at the decline in revenues in March.
Here's another good question, Daniel. Are locally owned franchises of a national retail eligible? Say, for example, I have my McDonald's at the corner of 355 and Christopher Avenue.
Sure.
Do I qualify?
That's a great question. So there are two answers to that, and I want to be very clear. The first answer is no, if that store is owned by the franchise. If it's a franchise store, if it's a corporate store, then it's no. However, if the franchise is owned, if the store is owned by a local entity, right, that is not a corporate entity. So the answer to that would be yes. An example to that would be, again, the McDonald's or 7-Elevens in Montgomery County. Majority of the 7-Elevens are owned by individuals. So those individuals, if they see a decline in revenues, they're eligible to apply. However, let's say a McDonald's that is owned by the corporation itself, they are not eligible to apply.
Okay. And here's another question. I'm not sure. Are there any restrictions to the industry?
No, the legislation did not restrict any industry, but there were preferences that were made for certain industries. So if you are a restaurant or retail storefront, then there are 25% of the entire 20 million, which is 5 million, is set aside for restaurant and retail storefront.
Okay. Here's another question. I have no social security number. Can I apply?
Well, remember, this is for businesses, right? So your business has to be registered if you're not a sole proprietor or faith-based organization. And registered businesses have tax ID number, right? The EIN numbers. So if, again, we're not looking at the individuals, we're looking at the business. This program was set up to assist businesses, which includes nonprofit and for-profit businesses and independent contractors and sole proprietors. So again, except if you're a sole proprietor or except if you're a faith-based organization, your business that is registered should have an employee identification number, and that's basically what you will provide when you're providing the information about the legal entity that you're submitting to us.
All right, maybe I'm going to help this viewer a bit more. So this person will be a sole proprietor, I'm assuming, but they have no social security number.
So if they're sole proprietors, the idea is that would be like how they've been paying taxes, because all businesses have to pay taxes.
All right, I guess that answers you.
That's correct. I mean,
interpret your viewer. If I don't interpret your question, maybe you can try to type it out again, and we can, while we have Daniel on the line. We still have 15 minutes, people, so go to our Twitter and Facebook page. The handle is at Imiserve. It's at IMMERSEVE. I hope I got that right. Imiserve. You can drop in your questions there, and you can also go onto montgomerycountymd.gov website, and you can type in the Montgomery County Public Health Emergency Grant, just to get more information. And the good thing for those just joining us, English may not be your first language. As Daniel has said throughout his this talk, we have different languages in Amharic, English, French, Korean, Mandarin, Spanish, Vietnamese, so that you can interpret the law based on your own understanding. So it's very good that the county is able to do that. And maybe you can just give us a brief history, because other people may not be aware how fully invested Montgomery County is to entrepreneurs. Can you give us some of those stats, Daniel, on businesses that are owned in Montgomery County, even women-owned businesses, just to show the significant impact of COVID-19? I know you like dropping those facts, so maybe you can share that with us.
Absolutely. So I always say that small business is big business in Montgomery County, and the reason for that is because 95% of all our businesses in the county have fewer than 20 employees. So can you imagine that 95% of all the businesses in Montgomery County, right, have fewer than 20 employees, right? So, and
so
of course,
businesses are qualifying for a PHEG grant.
The what?
So 95% of the businesses would qualify for this grant.
Yeah, but remember, the determinant is that have they incurred a significant loss in revenue? So even though you're a small business, but some businesses are still, in operations, right? Mm-hmm. That's right. So if you have not incurred a significant loss in revenue, then you will not be eligible. But indeed, and we thank God not all the businesses in Montgomery County have incurred a significant loss in revenue. So yes, but I just want to say, small business is big business, because when you have 95% of all businesses have fewer than 20 employees, that is a big deal, right? Mm-hmm. So let me drop the numbers on women, right? So and Montgomery County is #1 in the entire state when it comes to women businesses, right? Mm-hmm. And then 47% of businesses in Montgomery County are owned by women. Mm-hmm. Now, this is another big one. Can you imagine that? 45,000 people are employed by women-owned businesses in Montgomery County.
Wow.
Exactly. So that's why small business is big business in Montgomery County.
That's amazing. Yeah, so it's really important. And, these are your tax dollars at work, which is why it's important to pay your taxes, because when things like this happen, the county always has money to help out in situations like this. Let me see if we have any questions. Keep bringing those questions in at Emiserve, Twitter handle and Facebook handle. If you have any questions for Daniel.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you to be with us. Please, it was this very amazing show. Thank you so much, everyone. Just I want to remember everyone, the people who just joined us, that you just watching Afriquetoday, and this was a very amazing conversation, and we will do this conversation like all the time here on Afriquetoday. Please download Afriquetoday application. Also, you can be able just to watch this show on Roku TV or Amazon Fire Stick. Thank you so much, everyone. Stay tuned. At 7:15 we will start another show. Now I will give a last word to people live now. If you have something to say, please say something, please.
Daniel, you want to go
Daniel?
first?
Sure. I just want to thank all of you for helping us to get the word out. Again, for the folks watching this, I encourage you, if you are in Montgomery County, if you're a sole proprietor, if you are a nonprofit, if you are a business, please apply for this public health emergency grant. We're trying to make sure that as many nonprofits, sole proprietors, and businesses that apply, that we're able to grant them some funds. We know these are difficult times for businesses and nonprofits, but in our own little way, the county government, thanks to the county council and our county executive, they've really done a great job to make sure that they meet our residents, but also our businesses and nonprofits, somewhere where they could be able to pay some of their utilities and pay some of their bills. So thank you guys so much again for getting the word out. And please, at any time you guys need me, just let me know. I will come and give updates on this.
It's been a thank you so much, and we want to thank Wafamba Water Consulting, Afriquetoday. We thank you, Elaine, and we want to thank IMISERV for this great show. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you everyone. Like I say, just download the Afriquetoday app, and we will take a little bit break because we have another show coming now just here on Afriquetoday. We will take a little bit break, and when we will come back after the break, we will take another show. Just take a break and see you after the break. Thank you. Stay tuned.
Afriquetoday, our objective is to help you access trending information that is fresh and relevant in the promotion of African culture and values, as well as information that enhances economic, political, and social welfare in the continent. We provide a platform to share news, ideas, and useful information from different perspectives that reflect our African traditions such as music, art, and fashion, among others. With the dawn of the new year, Afriquetoday is here to deliver this information and more for you, our valued audience and stakeholders. We have spared no resources in refining our platform to make it better and look forward to serving your needs and your being part of a rejuvenated Africa that has so much to offer the world. Thank you for stopping by, and Happy New Year, everyone. Afriquetoday, our objective is to help you access trending information that is fresh and relevant in the promotion of African culture and values, as well as information that enhances economic, political, and social welfare in the continent. We provide a platform to share news, ideas, and useful information from different perspectives that reflect our African traditions such as music, art, and fashion, among others. With the dawn of the new year, Afriquetoday is here to deliver this information and more for you, our valued audience and stakeholders. We have spared no resource
Thank you for watching Afriquetoday. This is Afriquetoday, and we are live again here on Afriquetoday. A lot of people ask me how to watch Afriquetoday. It's very simple. And we have the second show will start now, and for that I have Dr. Manka with me now. She's live now from Maryland. Hi, Dr. Manka. How are you today? Hello, Dr. Manka. Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you now. How are you today?
I am good. How are you doing, Mr. Allen?
What we will talk today about?
So today we're going to be talking a little bit about post-traumatic stress syndrome, and we have Dr. Rodney on to talk to us about it a little bit more. So,
okay, I give you an opportunity to present, doctor, and the show will start right now. Let's go.
thank you so much, Alan. Thank you, Afriquetoday, for having us to live stream today. Good evening to you, our viewers, and good evening to everyone who's watching. Thanks again for joining us for this segment of our virtual discussions that are brought to you by Immigrant Community Services in partnership with Afriquetoday. Our goal is to bring you critical information and resources on dealing with this, the COVID-19 pandemic. And as I was talking to Mr. Allen earlier, we have a subject matter expert on today, Dr. Tamar Rodney. I'll let Dr. Tamar Rodney say hello to our viewers.
Hello, everyone. It's my pleasure to be with you this evening. Thank you, Manka and Elaine. And hopefully I can share with you some insights on how to better cope, some resources that we might have, and all considering it in the context of COVID-19.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rodney. We're so happy you're here to help us understand these things a little bit better. So for those of you who are new to our station and our services, Immigrant Community Services is an organization that is based in Montgomery County, Maryland, and it was really created to help a growing African immigrant population in the area to better be able to provide services that are culturally tailored to that community. So African immigrant community works to provide a service to immigrant and refugee communities, primarily Africans, and it offers services around social, family, education, employment, and other kind of tailored programming to African immigrants in the Montgomery County area and kind of surrounding counties and the Metro DC area. And so as we were talking about earlier, our conversation today is really going to be talking about post-traumatic stress syndrome. And we're going to talk, Dr. Rodney is going to tell us a little bit about what it is, how it presents itself, especially in the context of the African or the immigrant communities, and then talking about how to deal with it in terms of the crisis that we're facing right now. So a little bit about our structure tonight is that we are going to have a quick presentation from Dr. Rodney about post-traumatic syndrome. And then after that, we'll have a brief discussion with her, kind of diving more into how does it present itself in the African immigrant community. And then we'll have a question and answer session towards the ending. So please, if you're live with us on Facebook or the Immigrant Communities Services website or on Twitter, send us your questions and we'll address them towards the end of the session. And so I'd like to tell you a little bit more about Dr. Rodney, who's going to be talking to us tonight. So Dr. Rodney is a board-certified psychiatric nurse practitioner who has worked in trauma and psychiatry in multiple countries, including Jamaica, the United Kingdom, and the USA. She's an assistant professor at Johns Hopkins School of Nursing, and she practices clinically in the Baltimore City area where she's caring for adults and families with mental health issues. So diving right in, Dr. Rodney, please help me and our viewers really understand what trauma is and how it presents itself in the population.
Thank you so much, Manka. And it's never more important than right now to talk about. This is always important, but taking care of our mental health is something that we often overlook. And I'd like to start, first of all, by just reading in the last line from Maya Angelou's poem. And it goes, leaving behind nights of terror and fear, I rise. Into a daybreak that's wondrously clear, I rise. Bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave, I am the dream and the hope of the slave. I rise, I rise, I rise. And this poem stuck with me because as immigrants, we are often leaving somewhere to go somewhere else. And what we take with us is important. What we're leaving behind is less often discussed. And another part that I would like to stress is that very frequently we take the very best from our homeland and we're dispersed across the country. So the things that would naturally occur, like your 3-generation cousin just down the road that you could go to, doesn't exist normally. Yes, you have your friends, and yes, you have your some family members as well. But comparatively, there are times when we need to speak to a great grandma, and that is not physically present. And so when we speak about mental health, I want us to hold on some of the things that are present that we have now, some of the things that we purposely chose to do as immigrants, and the things that we also left behind. And I think that is the context in which we often forget, and is not so visible unless it's spoken about. So specifically about trauma, often we hear it simplified into PTSD. And so what that really stands for is post-traumatic stress disorder. And as the name suggests, something would have happened. You have a history of a traumatic event, and it's either an actual event or a threatened event. And what usually will result from the event is either death or serious injury. Now, importantly, this does not have to actually happen to you, but it could be someone close to you. So let's put it in the context of COVID. It could be that your mom is sick, and it's so worrying to you about the effects that will cause. That is a traumatic experience for you. Now, how it presents itself is usually what they call different clusters of symptoms, and I'll go through those, and they're namely intrusion symptoms, which can be in the form of nightmares or flashback or very intense emotional reaction to things, like you see a hospital and that reminds you of what happened there, and so you react to it. You can also purposely avoid things. So you avoid going to a place that previously brought you joy, or activities that previously brought you joy. You've taken a purposeful act to avoid going there. The next one is a change in mood. And so you've lost interest in, let's say basketball was your favorite thing to do. It no longer brings you joy. And you're very detached from others. So you pull yourself away from that community that normally gives you strength. And the last one is really your reaction to things. So you might be having difficulty sleeping, or you're very irritable or angry at things which doesn't normally make you angry or irritable. And the other two components I would like to address is that in the context of this usually happens about up to a month after having suffered that traumatic event. And very importantly, we are all going to feel some effects of this trauma. It is very natural that it will happen. However, for it to be classified as a disorder, it must have some significant impact on how you're able to carry out your everyday life. So is it so overwhelming that you can't go to work, that you can't take care of your children? And when you put it all together, we are all going to be on some spectrum of that era of trauma, and we don't want to undervalue any part of it. We really want to pay attention to the pieces as opposed to having a classified disorder. So some things I want us to consider is that it's said very loosely, and it's that we're all unique. Immigrants is a lovely term to bring us together because we know we belong to a community. But even within that context, we're coming from different immigrant backgrounds, and so different needs and different practices. And that's also important to remember, that being African doesn't mean that I value the same things that my other African brother would value. And so that's very important, that we are with a community, but we have unique needs as well. Our backgrounds, the reason why we are immigrants is very different. Some of it is by choice. Some of it is by searching for better opportunity. Some of it is to be with family. So it's not always a hard luck story. Sometimes it's a joyous story that we've chosen to immigrate from our country of birth. What are our specific needs? That's another thing that so someone dying might be viewed as a terrible event, but someone might view it as they're passing on. And so what that void leaves is important at an individual basis. So we won't take an absence of something to generalize it to everyone. And the last part is, what is your support and your coping mechanisms? Again, it's different for each individual. I like to cook. And so when I feel down, making a lovely meal that I could share with someone gives me joy. And it's also a way for me to cope. Some others would prefer to be quiet or pray. And so we have to think about those on an individual level. And so let's talk a little bit about some of the actual coping strategies that we could use as individuals. First and foremost, we need to accept that the response to trauma like this is normal. And I will say that again. We are going through something that we've never been through before. Parts of it might feel familiar, but in this exact framework, none of us have experienced COVID-19 before. And so the feelings that we're feeling of uncertainty and not knowing and fear and worry about what's going to happen, those are feelings that are natural and normal in response to any disaster. But through this, we need to maintain a positive attitude. Being positive about something affects how we interact with others and how others will respond to us. And so while it looks distressing, maintaining a positive outlook, it will end. We don't know what the date is yet, but it will. But maintaining a positive attitude just to keep you going, because quite frankly, that is the healthiest thing to do. Doing simple things like coping positively. So limiting intake of things like caffeine and alcohol, where yes, in moderation, it's good, but we often can use them negatively. So we have to be very mindful of that. And doing the things that we have control over, like having a balanced meal, going to bed on time, getting some proper sleep, taking some time out for yourself. Self-care is so critically important. We are unable to take care of anyone else if we don't take care of ourselves first. And lastly, accepting that there's much of this that we cannot change, we will not change. And so just realizing our limitations in the process, we can wash our hands, we can wear masks, we can do social distancing, physical distancing, but there's much of this disease that we do not know, and there's much of this that we have to accept as that information changes. So as we go through the questions, I hope this is in a general context, but I would love to visit with you more about, so yes, this is what the textbook says, and yes, these are general things, but what can we do within that immigrant space and context and background that would be more useful for us?
Thank you very much, Dr. Rodden, for that very informative presentation. Wow. Post-traumatic syndrome is a continuum, and symptoms can lie anywhere on that continuum. And I really like the fact that we have to accept that what is happening to us is not normal, but there's nothing we can do about it. We just have to, cope positively and stay away from the things that are not so good for us.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So I guess the first question I'm thinking about as immigrants, especially with this pandemic, is how do you think it's impacting just the general immigrant community?
So that's an excellent question, and I'm happy to explore a little bit more about this. So we already know that immigrants are usually not classified as immigrants. We're usually going by color. So Black and African American are sometimes considered to be immigrants. We of course know this is not true. But from that line, I would like to say that we all know that there is a disproportionate results of African Americans being affected by COVID-19. We know that. What we don't know is, how is it affecting immigrants? And so as things progress, this is something that we want to consider. What was the true effect on our immigrants? So many of us have lived through other epidemics: SARS, H1N1, chikungunya, dengue, HIV. So we know little pieces of how to cope. But there's a negative connotation to this, because it's very frequently attributed that the origin of these diseases is to a foreign country, and I mean foreign outside of the USA. So it's not a positive connotation to begin with. So we're setting ourselves up for overall negative impact, and we haven't even had the disease yet. So just baseline, things are looking not good. The other thing I want to think about is, what is that occupation that most of us immigrants occupy? And alarmingly, over 19% of healthcare workers are immigrants. And so it is a job that puts us on the front line, either in main front line or in a supporting role. So that's another thing that puts us at higher risk for contracting the disease and higher worry to bringing it home to our families. But there is something that it holds very significant and poignant meaning, especially for COVID-19, that diagnosis of COVID-19 is now done by telepsych or telemedicine or over the telephone. So we're not seeing someone to represent ourselves. So it comes down to, how do we communicate our needs? And you might not hear your accent, I might not hear my accent, but everybody else does. And there's an immediate barrier there that we have to accept, that someone hears you speaking differently. The first couple sentences makes no sense to them because they're busy processing that this person sounds different than I do. And one of my worry is, if we're not able to communicate to someone else on the telephone our needs, we might be dismissed, we might not get the care we need, and this inherently creates a bias towards the immigrant community. Now, it's not a general statement, because I could be going to a provider that knows me very well, and that could be the phone call. But just think about all those individuals that were making that cold phone call, that baseline. We have a couple of things that are not working in our favor. And I also worry that when we think about this cumulatively, will we also pursue going, or will we try to fix it ourselves, which might not be the best thing to do. So I want us to think about this as a time to bond together. We know what the limitations are. We know what the biases are. Recognize our individual needs. And so it might mean asking a friend to make that phone call if you feel more comfortable, or reaching out to a provider that you know. But until we have figured out what's a true effect, we need to address those critical things right now to make sure that the social biases, just on the basis that we're immigrants, don't affect our lives. And I mean lives in terms of getting treatment and staying healthy.
That is very true. We need to recognize the barrier and then begin to proactively work to make sure that it doesn't impact our health.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And so going now to trauma, many people in our community come from war-torn countries, or they've experienced various types of trauma before they came to the US or even in the US. So for these individuals who already have trauma experiences, how do you think the current pandemic is impacting them? And with that, could you also speak a little bit about secondary trauma? Because I think a lot of our viewers might not know what that is and might not be able to think about it in the context of this.
Absolutely. So let me take the first part first, in terms of many of us have experienced trauma in some other form. And there's two parts to this. First, it makes us absolutely resilient because we have been through a previous experience. So that's one part, to say, you've been there, done that, I know what to do, I've survived this. But it also makes us vulnerable. And for many of us, there are issues, traumatic issues that we've gone through, buried deep inside, and we've never dealt with. And adding on another layer of trauma on that makes you extremely vulnerable to break-in. It brings up issues before that weren't properly resolved, and this might be the time that it presents itself. So our triggers are heightened. Whatever it is that triggers us into either anxiety or depression or having nightmares, they're once again reawakened, and you have another layer of trauma to deal with historically. There's also societal expectations and treatment. So we, as immigrants, are often the backbone. The initial one is the backbone of the family, and we are supporting other individuals overseas as well. And so we're expected to be strong. And so showing vulnerability is not always what we want to do. What I would say is that validate each other's feelings, especially the ones that you're wrong. Validate. It does not mean weakness. It means it's a cry for help. And it actually is a powerful thing to do, that we accept our weaknesses, we accept our flaws, and we know when what we're doing isn't good enough. But I want to also talk about secondary trauma, which surprisingly, this has been worldwide accepted and one of the things that reclassified what PTSD is. So when an event happens, it doesn't mean that you need to be, let's put it into context. It doesn't mean that if there's a car accident, as a bystander, you're not affected. Yes, you're not in it, but you saw it, you reacted to it, and you start to internalize some of that. And so it affects you equally the way it affects the other person who could have been in there. And so do not minimize not having a positive COVID-19 effect. It could have been your sister or your grandma, someone you cared about, a co-worker. And so that layer also is presented on you. And so that is equally a way for you to have trauma, and we often push it aside and think it's not important. And I want to encourage all of us to acknowledge those feelings that you're feeling. Again, very important that feeling something or reacting to something is what we're supposed to do. We know how to react to a baby squealing. It's love and joy. We also need to know how to react when things are bad, and accepting that it's a human range of emotions that we're displaying. And it doesn't mean that you're better than I if I don't cry. It means that we react differently.
So recognizing that we have to react, and reacting to emotions and things that happen around us is very normal.
Very normal.
Reactions might not be positive, but we can work towards helping that. Okay.
Absolutely, yes.
Mm-hmm. So my next question for you is that many of us come from cultures with very different beliefs and even myths. And I can remember that until about a month ago, there was some sort of news going around that Black people could not get COVID-19. But we now know that that's not true. But we also know that mental health issues in some cultures are considered curses, or they're actually not perceived as a real illness. So what are some actual signs that individuals and families can really look at to identify when someone is struggling with trauma or trauma symptoms?
That is such a powerful thing, and it's ingrained within the immigrant culture about how to view things and how things have previously viewed. And so it also increases that reluctance to seek help. But I want to speak about it in the context of stigma. We attribute stigma to things that are bad, and we label them as bad. And so that is what often goes into this myth. And so if we believe this myth that it's not true, clearly, let's just reiterate, COVID-19 does not discriminate. Everyone is vulnerable. So I'm hoping our viewers will take that as a fact that everyone is vulnerable, and it is not a myth. All races, all economic classes are affected by COVID-19. So recognizing that and accepting that the fact that we're not superhuman is very, very important. But how we're brought up also has a very important part to play with this. And so it's not too long ago that the idea of someone having a mental health disorder was a curse, or, you did something bad. There are multiple different attributes to someone given a crude name because they're experiencing mental health disorder, which further pushes individuals to not talk about it. The other part is that we come from communities that mental health doesn't quite look like what the textbook says. So I'll to put it into real life, I'll bring up one that is in the textbook, but I guarantee you that most persons that live near the equator has never experienced it, and that is of seasonal affective disorder. And so whenever I'm teaching, I would ask, most of the classroom would know what seasonal affective disorder is. When the seasons change, individuals might feel a low mood. But if you're in a country that doesn't really experience seasons, or seasons in the reverse part of the month, it doesn't actually apply. So I was born in Jamaica, where there's no winter. So there's no winter blues to describe. Similarly, how we view things like anorexia or depression is very different. So it's not that the disorder doesn't exist. It's the symptoms that are not displayed the same way. And so we need to be very careful that although certain things don't apply, it doesn't mean that the individual is not hurting. It doesn't mean that the reactions you're doing is not to the change in the season. It's not visible and it doesn't check that textbook. So it points to a larger issue that it's very important that we seek care from individuals who understands us, who is willing to have those discussions with us, and that we're equally willing to talk about some of those myths, even if we believe it. We're not trying to change anyone's mind, but it's a discussion to be starting. One of the huge area that it's often buried or covered up is the religious expectations. Are you weak because you have a mental health disorder? Is it that you're not doing your religious duties, or it's a punishment from God? And if we look at it in context, religion can be an extremely powerful way to anchor your faith. It can give you strength, but it can also be the thing that breaks individuals to say they're not doing something good. And it's not about being right or wrong. And I really want to emphasize this. What we believe is part of our culture and is how we were brought up. It might not be the thing that your provider believes, but have that discussion. Unashamedly say what that myth is. And it's an opportunity for you to teach someone else something and for them to know something about you while you're making those decisions that you're making. And start the conversation. Because it might be that the practitioners are wrong. It might be that you are wrong. But if you're not brave enough to say, this is what I believe, this is what I've been taught, this is how I was grown, we won't get anywhere. Hiding it is the worst thing that we can do.
We need to be willing to have those open conversations with our providers to be able to get care and get the help that we need.
Oh, yes, absolutely. We should.
Thank you. So how can we then provide comfort to our family and friends who already experiencing like depression and anxiety or other forms of trauma now in this crisis that could be re-traumatizing them or really exacerbating their health conditions?
So excellent question. And this is one of the ones that is near and dear to me because this is what we can do now. We're not waiting on a diagnosis. These are simple things I would love to discuss about. How can I help my sister or my brother? So we often shy away because we don't know, we're not going to say the right thing or we're going to upset them if we say something. Being present virtually is the most powerful thing that you can do. Being there for that sister, brother, auntie, or uncle who calls you or call to check on them. We're all going through difficulties and it's more poignant now to check in on those individuals you care about. And when they express those feelings to you that they might, you validate those feelings. If this is the way they're feeling and this is the way that they're reacting, you validate that. You might not understand where they're coming from, but as human beings, we all know what it feels like to love, to feel fear, to feel anxiety. And so while your reaction to COVID is not fear and worry, we know what that feels like and it's bad. And so we can connect to each other from that aspect. So I want us to also accept that we are doing the very best we can and remind each other that, again, this is new. We know pieces of it, but this is new. And for the most part, we're doing the best we can. We're working with the tools that we have. When we are physically separated as we are now, it shouldn't mean that we should socially disconnect. We need our families and we need our friends. Reach out to them. Have that Zoom birthday party if you need to. Write a card, call your grandma, say, I want to hear that recipe. I'm going to do it and I'll call you back and tell you how it tasted. Those are the little tiny things. But above all, when you know nothing, when you feel like you're completely out of your depth, remember to be kind. Remember to be supportive. Be understanding that we are going to react negatively. Give each other some grace. Give yourself some grace. And if you're by yourself and it's too much, reach out for help. Pick up that telephone and call somebody and said, I am not okay. I need some help. Never feel like you need to deal with this alone. And we have providers which will help when things get to be critical, but know that just being there for someone else is the most powerful thing you can do for them.
Reach out if you need to and be there for your friends and family who need you.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. So we also know that certain life choices can impact our mental health. And now with the COVID-19, some families are having to make very, very difficult decisions that can be stressful. So what are some recommendations that you can offer to our viewers to help to keep it from becoming really overwhelming, these decisions that they're having to make as a family or as an individual?
So this COVID-19 has given me 3 more roles on top of my regular full-time job, because never before have I been full-time mommy, full-time wife, full-time employee, and then full-time I don't know what to do with myself. So you're being split in multiple different ways, and it takes a while to recognize that. And sometimes it's only when you've gotten to the part of complete exhaustion, you're like, why am I so overwhelmed? So just stop and take a minute and think about 6 weeks ago. How different was your life? How different was it to all the expectations that you're doing now? What are some of those things you're worrying about? So there's a real worry from many about the economic outcomes. You know, will I lose my job? Will I be able to pay my rent? Will I be able to feed my children? Am I doing a good enough job as a parent? Am I actually letting the kids watch too much TV? You're learning as you go. And so there are times when the child will need to watch some TV to get some sanity. But another thing that we're doing is we're watching a lot of TV, a lot of social media. We're consuming the news in a volume that we've never done before, and it is brutal. And so it also increases our anxiety. I would suggest, and I don't like giving advice all the time unless I'm asked, but limit that amount you're consuming, because that can be one of the sources of you being overwhelmed. We hear little extra pieces every day and we're like, okay, I need to be connected all the time. You need to be connected to know what to do. You don't need to be connected for the news to run your life. We are needing, and I say this very often, to give ourselves a lot of grace. We usually wake up at 6:30 in the morning. You know, you can sleep in until 7 if you feel completely burnt out. It's okay. I'm giving you permission to say it is okay, to give yourself lots of grace. Try to divide, try to come up with a little plan that you need to. Maybe you need to say, okay, I'm going to zone in for work if you have that opportunity to work from home for 4 hours nonstop. But I'm also going to take 2 hours to spend some time with my family, so I don't feel like I'm being dragged in 2 different parts. And if it works that week, great. And if it doesn't, next week you'll do better. This is not about being perfectionist. And I think that is the piece that we try to be absolutely perfect, try to keep things as normal. I don't know what normal is anymore, as normal as they would be. And it's not normal times. We are asked to be superhuman, doing superhuman things, and we're not. So take some time to be graceful to yourself and accept that we will not get it right. We will just say, and tomorrow I will try again.
I think we're beginning to see a theme. On Tuesday, Dr. Dalton said the same thing. He said we need to give ourselves compassion, give ourselves permission to be able to not get everything right today. So I think we're seeing that theme, that this is a time when we really have to be graceful with ourselves and give ourselves, you know, the second try, the third try on different things. So
and forgive ourselves too. Forgive us, because we are our harshest critics. So you know what? I spoiled dinner and I forgot to do dinner. All right, so tomorrow I'm going to make up and I'm going to do cookies tomorrow. So forgive yourself, and we will all just think, okay, and we got through. It will be a beautiful story to tell your grandchildren when this is all over.
Thank you. Yes, we need to be definitely forgive ourselves. So I guess my next question, as immigrants, we have family members, you know, in Jamaica for you, in Cameroon for me, and our viewers in various parts of the country, in the US and even the world. But how do we really cope with knowing that we don't know when flights are going to be going to those places anytime soon? And it's almost like we don't know when we're going to see our friends and family members again? How do we really cope with that?
So that's a brilliant question, and I always tell my my dad, like, don't even put a date in when I'll see you again. I'll see you when I see you, and it almost becomes comical because Jamaica doesn't want us to come there, and US doesn't want anyone to come in. So it has gone into it's out of our hands. But a little version of this would have happened the very first time we went away, and so we're reliving that right now. To say I'm moving to a different country. I don't know when I'm going to see you, but I'll see you soon. No, that was by choice. Now we're being asked to do that. But to be honest with you, Manka, it's one of the things that we physically need to do to protect ourselves. So distance makes a heart grow fonder, but it's also a life choice to protect those who are vulnerable, those who we care about, protecting ourselves from getting something that we're not sure about. And so we use everything that is virtual to us to stay connected. Yes, I can't come home to enjoy my home cooked meal anymore, not now anyway, but I am planning for that big return. And I'm going to live virtually about all the things I'm going to do. I do video calls when I need to. Have them video call. I call my dad for his birthday. First time he used a video call, but it was amazing because he thought it was great. And so it helped us to lessen that impact of not being physically able to go. And it's also good to share what's different in how that country is practicing and we're practicing here. Use it as a leverage, as you know, we're fighting the same disease, but we're fighting it so differently. I wonder why that is. So use this as a point of discussion to celebrate what's different in between, and honestly laugh at how ridiculous this is, that I could have gone last month and I didn't, but the next time I'm going, I'm definitely coming to see you, because the times are changing and it requires us to do so, not just because flights restriction, but it actually comes down to a health issue that we need to give it each other time to figure out this disease, to know when it is safe to travel again.
Okay. Very interesting, thinking about the first time you left your friends and family members and thinking back to how that is. But I really like the suggestion of laughing. Mm-hmm. I hear that the laughter is medicine, so.
It absolutely is. Free medicine.
So, all right. So we're going to now turn our attention to our viewers' questions. And the very first question that came in is saying, what are some practices that we can use or we should be using for self-care?
Lovely question for self-care. So we know the guidelines are to wash your hands and to cover our face. Those are practical things that we not only need to practice for ourselves, but ensuring that when we ask individuals in the home to do it, it's also caring for yourself. So caring for yourself should include at this point what we do for others to take care of them, because everything my partner does affects me, and everything I do affects them. So I want to expand this idea of self-care. It's not just taking that fabulous long extended walk. That is a part of it, but immediately looking after our health. If we're sick, we won't be able to enjoy that lovely dinner that makes us happy. That is true. But on a practical note, take those little walks if you can. You know, take a little extra time out of your day. Exercise. Even if you don't know what the moves are, try it for 10 minutes. Yoga, meditate, read, you know, do some of those things that you wanted to give a try, that you're prioritizing yourself at this time. We are at home. We are running out of ideas of what to do, but it might be the only time that we get to spend with our children extendedly. And that makes us feel good about ourselves. Being able to do something that we previously weren't able to do gives you time to bond with your children, and you'll be surprised to see the joy that they get from you being there is something that ultimately comes to taking care of your needs and caring for yourself. So I just want to reiterate that self-care, we usually look at it in a very limited context about, I am going to have something that makes me happy. But actually, it's also doing for others and interacting with others to satisfy some of those things that make you happy and make others happy.
Good. Self-care is not just about you, but it's about what you're doing with your friends and family and community.
It is. It should be.
Okay, that's quite a few questions, so let me see. All right, I think we'll take this one. How can I help someone who's in denial? One of the questions from our viewers.
And denial, it still exists today. I literally heard someone on the TV said, I don't believe that thing. I don't believe that thing called COVID. And at first, you know, the instant reaction is to, but how couldn't you? Can't you see? You want to ask that person, why not? And I will say that honestly, because until last night, I never thought of how individuals might have been previously duped by the individuals they live around, treated badly, you know, denied care, historically being lied to. And those are some realities that affect individuals and how they view this thing. And they might be in denial, not because they don't necessarily believe, they might not believe the source it's coming from. So first, ask, why don't you believe? What is the aspect, as opposed to blocking them to push our views on them? And then, if there's credible evidence, to leave on the table to say, but have you thought of this? And have you thought of this? Have you seen where this is? That's an opening, and it might not change your mind, but it gets them to start thinking. And if it's coming from an individual who they trust and they have a lot of respect for, it will change the way they view things. And so our role is not necessarily to change a historical aspect, but to be that person that could be the trusted one to change how an individual reacts to information, which I can't believe this one came in, and I really thank the viewer for asking that question, because my initial reaction before tonight would be like, well, present some evidence, that's how we live. But it's really, really important to step back away from that before you start pushing your ideas. Ask, what is it that is fueling this denial?
Very good point. Take a step back and find out why.
Yes, absolutely. We really should.
The next question from our viewer is, what should we look for as trauma triggers, and how can we manage or handle it?
So there are some simple ones to look for. Triggers usually comes in the senses, actually. So what you see or smell or hear are usually things that are considered triggers. So if there's a familiar thing, like a perfume, that was the last perfume you smell of a bad event, it might come back and it might trigger something. So we want to be very careful that when those things arise, accepting it, and if we can pinpoint it to something, we start to process it that way. If you're the one experiencing it, chances are it will be a phase and it will fade. Most individuals who go through trauma, it's temporary. And we have to hold on to that there is an acute stress reaction to things. If we're frightened, we'll sweat and panic for a few minutes, but it doesn't necessarily last a lifetime. And so we also have to give our body time to react to things. We don't always cover it up. It's that flight or fight response. Our body reacts to make us make a decision. And again, I want to put it in a very good context that feeling things is a good thing. Processing things is good. And we know when it gets to the point where it can be opening up to other things that we're not sure how to handle. And that is when we really should reach out for help.
Feeling things is good.
It is. It's absolutely a good thing.
Okay. And our next question, I like this one. So how can we use our African culture, dance, drumming, and art to help us deal with stress?
Oh, I love this question, because we absolutely should use all of it. Our culture has bring so much joy to everyone around the world. Why shouldn't we use it for ourselves, especially music and dance? And so blast it as high as you need to. And again, if you're by yourself, phone a friend and say, okay, we're going to have a party together. But realize the richness of our culture, that if we don't share it, nobody will know. And so here is a time to use it for ourselves. And can I just extend that to figure out you can cook your traditional dishes and put on your traditional dress. You know, celebrate the very best things about your culture in a time when you need it the most. You know, when you have something good and you're saving it for that special event. No. This is the time to draw on that and play your music and dance and invoke that natural rhythm of happiness that comes from that music. Because so many other persons around the world have benefited. This is the time we will cash in on our own valuable things for ourselves, our enjoyment and happiness.
Nice. Enjoy our culture. Good.
Yes, absolutely. So I might be putting on some music tonight.
Okay. So the other question I see is, can there be collective trauma, group trauma, and how can people deal with this?
Oh, you know, so some of my research is with veterans, and this is one of the examples of where that is very evident. But I would also like to put this in the context of immigrants. It's a group. And so there are things that we experience uniquely that even if you're not in the same place, that happens to you. You will react to it as an immigrant. And so group trauma is where an individual might hear of, see of, or experience the same events and have very similar reaction because there's one core element that is applicable to all. How do we deal with it? You use that same group as your strength. And so you discuss it amongst yourself about how did you feel and how did I feel and why did we react differently. And so there might be times when you need to reprocess it, and there's no one you can reprocess it apart from those who understand the way it feels. I will say there's some things that are lost in translation. And so there's no other way but to say it in my own language to you. And so if I can explain that to somebody else who got it and who experienced it the same way, that's a very powerful thing. Oh my goodness, you understand. And you would be surprised at how much just that acknowledgement lessens that traumatic experience, because, oh my goodness, I am not losing my mind. It is very real and you felt it too, because I can explain to you on a very granular level, what is that thing that we experience as a group and how can we get past this? So use your group experience. Yes, we experience it. Use it as a source of strength for each other.
Use our group experience to us together be better.
Yes, we should. Mm-hmm.
So I think one of the things you were talking about, or we've been talking about, is our culture. And the part of our culture is that we're used to going to having celebrations and doing a lot of social gatherings. That's like the fabric of our culture. But right now, we cannot have any of those things. So what are some things that we can do to kind of help us with these feelings of disconnection or being isolated from our friends and family members?
So, you know, I actually see this as a part of grieving. The loss, so we often think of grieving as someone dying, but not really. Grieving is really the loss of something or a way of doing things. And so give yourself enough time to say, is this really happening? Can I really not go to my party or my church event or that birthday celebration? Is it? And there's that denial. Like, I think I'm going. It's still going to happen. So when you find yourself going through the process of grief, it goes through denial, and then you finally will get to acceptance. And so throughout all of this, what it reminds you, it strengthens the need for these things. It puts another importance of it that we would normally do as, it's okay to go and I might not go, and you know, I love going, but it reconfirms the value of it. And so what we do is recreate that value. It's not necessarily about the actual space. It's what we do. It's the things we look forward to. It's the the way or the food that you'll get there, you know, okay, I'm going to recreate that one food item that I really wanted to go there for, and recreate the value of those things. Again, I can't emphasize enough, because we're physically separated, this is the time to do those virtual parties and turn up that music loud and recreate. So you fry the fish and I will fry the chicken, and we're going to come together and celebrate those things that we wanted to do. We're having virtual church events. We're having virtual baptisms. It still needs to happen. But the piece that I think will change us forever is that we will now recognize the value of spending time with each other. Whether it's distance or in person, and we shouldn't let not being able to do it in the traditional sense prevent us from enjoying the value of that.
Wow, that ties right back to what Dr. Dalton was saying on Tuesday. He said we really have to be creative in these times. Do things creatively, do the same things that we used to do, but do it in a creative way, like you said. Fry the chicken, fry the fish, and come together and celebrate still.
Yes, yes.
I think we're going to take our last question now. And so the viewer is asking, can we be traumatized by watching the news or seeing someone else in trauma? And then what do we do?
Oh my, so that is it. That is the perfect definition of secondary trauma. You are going through an example of being exposed to a traumatic event every single night, multiple nights, and hearing things that you've never heard before, seeing pictures that you weren't prepared for, nor can you immediately process in that 2-second clip that comes on the TV. And so I would really encourage you to limit that intake, because most of it, unfortunately, is bad news. Most of it is sensationalized to put in the wow factor with the music behind it and breaking news behind it, and the recurring. We want to stay connected, but we need to be very careful and monitor what is going in. How do we deal with it? Exactly that. Limit yourselves. And when this is over, process the way we do things, because from that example alone, you have been exposed to trauma and could have those traumatic experiences. It's no different from watching a scary movie and having nightmares, because you weren't prepared for what was happening. And what you're doing is watching a scary movie over and over again every day, and it just keeps getting worse. So we need to limit our scary movie intake.
Limit our scary movie intake. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rodney, for all the valuable information and the skills and strategies that you're giving us. So I do understand that you have some resources to share with us. So I will give you this time to, any final words that you have for our viewers. You can say them.
Absolutely. So it's been an absolute pleasure to be here and to talk about things which are important. And it brings up things for me which I need to reevaluate about how important our immigrant network is. The one thing I will say as parting words is we will get through this together. And I will reemphasize that together piece. And while we're figuring it out, lean on each other and be gentle to yourself. Lean on your local counseling centers, religious and spiritual groups, any support groups that you might have, family and friends. Those are the most accessible. But there are also places online that you can go to. And so one of the very helpful one is the Anxiety and Depression Association of America, and it's adaa.org. And you can actually do self-assessments if you find that helpful, or look for tips that you might use. But another one that might be useful, especially to our younger viewers, is a crisis text line. And the name sounds more serious than it really is. It's not really just for crisis, but it's a line that you can connect to a provider and text your messages in to keep it anonymous and to ask whatever questions you want to, without sharing anything about yourself. And so that number is 741-741. It spells the word connect. So that's 741-741.
And is that only for younger people, or anyone can use it?
Anyone can use it. So what we can leverage using the phone, and we're still in an era where we don't necessarily want to show our face, or you want to keep things private, and that's fine. But it allows you to do that text message. And if you want to open it up to a phone call, then you can move on to there. But it's an entry point to keep things as gentle as it is, because we're still afraid sometimes to discuss the things we don't know.
So thank you so much, Dr. Rodney. Thank you. This has been very invaluable resources. And again, we're going to post these resources on our website. So I would like to take this time to thank you, our viewers, for tuning in today to hear us talk about post-traumatic syndrome and how you can really figure out what it is and what resources are available to help you, and how we as a community can begin leaning on each other to help ourselves and help ourselves grow through this crisis. So I'd like to thank Dr. Rodney again for coming on. I'd like to thank Afriquetoday for hosting us, and Immigrant Community Services for putting this on. So as we close tonight, I'll say thank you to our viewers. Be safe, and I'll pass you now back on to Alan in the studios.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. It was very, very great. Good job, Dr. Banka. Thank you so much, Dr. Tamara. It was very great show today, and I hope a lot of people enjoy, and I think next week we will do better. Maybe we have some technical issues today. No, next week we will try to do nice job. Again, thank you all of you, and thank you so much, everyone. Of course, if you want to watch Afriquetoday, is very easy. Just go to www.afriquetoday.com. Go also to, you can watch Afriquetoday at the same time on 4 platforms: Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and our website www.afriquetoday.com. Download Afriquetoday app. Afriquetoday is already available on on iPhone, Android telephone. And if you have a smart TV, you can just download Roku TV or Amazon Fire Stick, and you will be able to watch Afriquetoday. My name is Alain Pierre. I hope we have a show every Sunday at 3 p.m. This special show, Coronavirus, will continue next Tuesday. Thank you so much, everyone, and see you. Bye.
Today, our objective is to help you access trending information that is fresh and relevant in the promotion of African culture and values, as well as information that enhances economic, political, and social welfare in the continent. We provide a platform to share news, ideas, and useful information from different perspectives that reflect our African traditions, such as music, art, and fashion, among others. With the dawn of the new year, Afriquetoday is here to deliver this information and more for you, our valued audience and stakeholders. We have spared no resources in refining our platform to make it better, and look forward to serving your needs and you being part of a rejuvenated Africa that has so much to offer the world. Thank you for stopping by, and Happy New Year, everyone.